real quick, lots of stuff going on, kind of interesting to talk about, think about. First off, first thing that caught my attention today is we actually have well, at least what I consider a pretty significant bankruptcy filing in the food industry. Uh, Frankly, I never heard of this company before, but again, not surprising because I don't really follow stocks all that well. But Dean Foods, actually the largest milk producer, has filed for Chapter 11. And a couple of things interesting about this that I didn't know. First off, is milk consumption has dropped off the map by 26%, which is I find interesting. Just because I remember schools always trying to give kids milk and all that stuff, strong bones, all that marketing campaign, which I always assumed was true, but I don't have a medical degree, so who knows. But what they're saying is there's been a lot of non-dairy consumption. I'm guessing that's almond milk and the like. Also, companies going private label. I think Walmart actually started producing milk in 2017 or something. So, looks like Dean Foods, being the largest, doesn't always work. Looks like they are, going for Chapter 11. It did talk about they're looking to sell, right? Sell to someone else. So, looks like it's just interesting. The largest milk producer goes out of business. I was expecting the article talking about some kind of debt or acquisition that went bad, but no. Supply and demand. They have too much supply and not enough demand. So that was pretty interesting. Next up, let's talk about the 1%. So UBS talked to or interviewed 3,400 people in the 1%. Basically trying to figure out what the 1% is doing in 2020 or trying to set themselves up for 2020. It's a pretty decent article. You should check it out. I think I found this one on CNBC. Again, UBS gets the credit for this. There were two things of note. One is 55% of them, so over 1,700, believe that there's going to be a significant drop. And I guess, and they're talking about the stock market at this point, some point next year. Which, two things about that. A, they didn't make a call. It's kind of like saying, hey, sometime next year, something bad's going to happen. Kind of feels like a no duh, but that's what they said. And then the second thing is, and this one's actually more appropriate, right? It's interesting to watch people say they think something's coming, and then they don't do anything. But again, the 1% has upped their cash position to roughly 25%, which I think is pretty shocking, right? If the 1%, if their investable assets or whatever they are, they're sitting and 25% of them in cash, that really, really tells you that they see something bad coming, right? It's one thing for them to all say, hey, 55% of us think something bad's going to happen. But if they're actually going to step up and move 25% of their portfolio to cash, time to pay attention, right? Uh, it's something we better all be looking at is how is our cash position? Because, are we over leveraged on fancy stocks that could get us in trouble? Are we over leveraged in other parts? Do we have too much debt? Who knows, right? So I think it's really telling that the 1% has upped their cash position to 25%. I don't know if that's ever happened before. I don't ever recall it being that high. And I've been reading news for 20 years now like this. Certainly possible, but that really does tell me the 1% sees something coming, and they're moving ahead, right? They're moving early, right? They may miss out on some of this end of year stock rally, but they don't care, right? They want to be in cash, so good for them. Disney Plus released today, and they have, at least according to the article I wrote or read, they have had so much demand, right? Demand has exceeded their expectations, and their system broke. Whoops. All right, so they had some technical issues on day one. I have no idea if it's working now. I haven't checked it out, but I do think you think you would stress test that stuff, right? You would think, but apparently that didn't happen. Something else I read is it looks like Snap, one of those technology companies, has released Spectacles 3, which are their eyeglasses that allow you to see augmented reality and put on some 3D features to your snaps, right? Snaps, or if you don't know what Snap is, look it up, Snapchat. Uh, but I think it's pretty interesting, right? I think the world is definitely going augmented reality. I do think at some point, hopefully in my lifetime, right? If I'm at halfway, hopefully in my lifetime, the phone is replaced by, you know, glasses. So we'll see. They are a little expensive. They're $380. But, you know, especially when you think about Snap, I think Snap's user base is like, I think it's 13 to 25. And then to slap a $380 price tag on the spectacles, it seems like the hardware doesn't match the user base. But I do think the idea that Snap's working on, again, Spectacles 3, um, I think the world's going augmented reality in 3D, so good for them. Next up, Huntsville, Alabama, Rocket City. There's a big article on, again, I think it was CNBC, it might have been CNN, talking about Huntsville just being the place that is attracting more and more businesses. They have unemployment at 2.1%. They have a highly educated workforce. They have one of the highest per capita degreed engineers force in PhDs. And you could really see, and this is interesting to me, because you can really see how San Francisco and the Bay Area could crumble over the next decade. And cities like Huntsville, with affordable housing, at least by Bay Area standards, a technology force of engineers and probably computer science and all of that, you could see how Huntsville could become the next Silicon Valley, right? It'll be called something else, right? I don't think you can have two Silicon Valleys, but maybe it's Rocket City or what. I mean, that's a name they've had since the military's moved in. So I can definitely see why Huntsville, Alabama is getting a lot of talk in the press. A lot of the real estate channels that I talk to and listen to talk about Huntsville, Alabama. And I think we even had Tim on an interview, probably Tim Knox, maybe a month ago, talking about Huntsville. So pretty cool. And then the last thing of note, there's so much discussion about the trade war and the trade deal and U.S. and China and phase one and blah, blah, blah. But did you know that the largest trade deal expected in 2020 does not include the U.S.? Yeah, it actually includes much of the Asia and Australia, New Zealand, things of that nature. So it's pretty interesting to realize that, how big we think we are. There's a big world out there, and sometimes we're not part of these agreements. So just pretty interesting. So again, kind of summarizing the morning, Dean Foods, largest milk producer, goes Chapter 11 or files Chapter 11. UBS interviews the 1%, and the 1% is nervous about next year, and more importantly, not only nervous, but they are taking action. They've upped their cash position to 25% of their portfolio. Disney Plus is here. We like it so much that it crashed the system. I hope it's up by now, by the way, but I don't know. Snap released Spectacles 3, which is taking on augmented reality and some 3D features for their snaps. Huntsville, Alabama, maybe replaces the Silicon Valley in the next decade or so, because their housing is cheaper and less government intrusive, like we are here. And then the largest trade deal next year doesn't include the U.S. So that's what I got this morning. Let me know what you think. Leave a comment below, and we'll talk to you tomorrow. Take care.